Come on.
Welcome to our series on Pirkei Avot. We are still on chapter 1, but we're on Mishna 7, and we'd like to dedicate this episode in memory, as usual, of Levy, Moshe, Esther, and Elisheva, Levy, and also Mr. Nissim Ibrahimov. We don't have his father's name, unfortunately, but Hashem knows everything. So that's what we can come up with at such short notice. Okay, so over to Michael.
Thank you, Rabbi Mashiach. Today we're going to be the individual in question is a certain Nittai of Arbala, Nittai the Arbalites, who was, a bit of history regarding him, who was the Av Beis Din, or vice president of the Sanhedrin, under the Nasi Yoshua ben Perachia, which we mentioned in the last lesson. This was the second of the pair that we talked about, and it was at the time of the John Hyrcanus. This was approximately between 134 BCE and 104 BCE. So this, what do we know about this gentleman? He wasn't really famous for his. Where is Arbala? Arbala, firstly, is a city in the Galilee, not far from Tiberias. He wasn't famous for his halachot, but some of his teachings, like these, are preserved in the Pirkei Avot. They afford a good glimpse into his character, as we will see. Let's just mention the Mishna quickly, and we can give reference to what they mean. So, Nittai ha'arbalei omer, Nittai the Arbalite used to say, Harchek mishochen ra, keep a distance from an evil neighbor, ve'al titchaber l'rasha, and do not become attached to the wicked, ve'al tityaesh min ha'puruyonus, and do not abandon faith in divine retribution. So, distance yourself from a bad neighbor. Don't consort with an evil man, and do not despair at heavenly retribution. These utterances contrast sharply with the gentle maxim of his colleague that we learned last lesson, Yoshua ben Parachia. Nittai seems to have spoken after Hyrcanus had deserted the party of the Pharisees. You remember the Pharisees, and he joined the Sadducees, and he ended up persecuting his former friends. The phrase "renounce not the hope of retribution" was perhaps intended to comfort the Pharisees with the thought that Hyrcanus himself would not escape divine punishment, while the other two injunctions were designed maybe to keep them from joining the Sadducees. So he is telling us, be careful of an evil neighbor, someone who is someone who would perhaps take you away from your beliefs, or cause you problems, or just a bad influence. You don't want bad neighbors. Bad neighbors must be a curse on you, so you have to avoid them. If we recall what Rambam used to teach in Hilchot Deot, he used to say, not specifically about a neighbor, but he said that if you live in a city full of evildoers, you must extricate yourself from them, lest they be a bad influence on you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I see here Rabbeinu Yonah makes an interesting comment. In that it says, distance yourself from a bad neighbor. You wouldn't think of moving into a place where you have neighbors who are dodgy. So Rabbeinu Yonah tells us you have to be careful to investigate where you're going to live. If you're going to move somewhere, take the time to scope out the neighborhood, see who the chevra are there. Is it a frum neighborhood? Maybe make some inroads into finding out who your direct neighbors are. So maybe just knock on their door, etc. I mean, it's hard to tell at first blush, whether you've got a good neighbor or a bad neighbor. But it's definitely worth making your hishtadlut, so you're going to be settled in a place where you're not going to have any bad influence, or you're not going to be hurt or under any form of bad influence in any way.
Okay, so what does Rambam say? What's his commentary? So he comments on the do not befriend an evildoer. And Rambam says, in any type of friendship and companionship, so that you will not learn from his deeds. And we have already elucidated in the previous chapters that a man learns from the vices found in the company of evildoers. It's very easy to get influenced by someone doing evil. And Rambam continues, and he said further, if you sin or you see that one sin, do not be confident and say that Hashem will only punish him in the world to come, and do not despair of quick vengeance from him for his sin. So what does Bar Tanura comment on this? He says, one who enters, what is this matter like? It is like, if you live next door, a bad person, to one who enters the house of a tanner, someone who tans leather. Even though he doesn't take anything with him, nonetheless he absorbed the foul smell and brings it out with him. And he says also and do not despair of punishment, that you should say, the actions of this evildoer are succeeding, I will go and cling to him, since fortune is smiling at him. Therefore it states, do not despair at punishment, meaning to say, know that punishment will come quickly upon him, as his calamity will come suddenly. So it's very interesting. So obviously we learn from this is to know your neighbours and don't mix with bad people. This also can be extended to don't allow yourself bad influences in general. You know, you can be sitting at home. You don't have to know your neighbours. You can be sitting at home looking at the internet, and you can be learning various things that are no good for you, or learning about people that didn't have Torah values. In fact, some of them were opposite Torah values, and you can be subtly influenced by them. That's the same thing. If someone is but even more so if someone's living next door to you. So, and also don't abandon faith in divine retribution. Sometimes we look and we see evil people prospering, and you think, what is going on in life? Why does Hashem allow this guy to prosper? Maybe I'll side with him. He looks like he's having a great life. I'll side with him. And in the end of the day, if you lie down with dogs, you stand up with fleas. So
wow.
You must avoid them.
It's interesting. It reminds me of a mashal that I heard once on a shiur by Rabbi Wallerstein. So he says, there was a fish that was underneath the water with all the other school of fish, and he sees some of them rising to the top of the water. He's like down below with other fish. Some of them are up at top. So he wants to know what's going on. Why are these fish going up to the top? So he goes up and he sees these fish are jumping out the water, and they're saying, "Look, we want to see what it's like to be, what it's like living on the other side. We're under the water. We want to go up, see where the rest of the of the animal kingdom lives. There's humans there, there's animals there. We want to see." So they're all jumping out the water, and this fish says, he puts his head at the top, and he sees there's a fisherman there, and he's casting this big net and pulling all the fish onto his boat, which is a trawler. Of course, this is meant to catch the fish. But as he sees the fish there, what are the fish doing? He sees the fish doing something that he's never seen any of his fellow fish do before. What are they doing? They're jumping and dancing and frolicking all together, like doing this crazy fish ballet. So this fish says, "Wow, this is the life that those fish were longing for when they were jumping out of the water. It's a fantastic life because it has to be like one long party." So he says, "I'm going to do the same." So he jumps out of the water, the fisherman catches him, and he himself starts jumping and dancing, but he realizes this is not jumping and dancing of simcha. It's not a dance of life, it's a dance of death, because it's the dance that the fish does before he runs out because he can't survive out of the water, and shortly afterwards he's dead, and the fisherman takes him to shore to be made into fish fingers or whatever. So this is a mashal of life. You look and you see people on the other side. You look at yourself, and if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're in yeshiva, you're in the kollel, you're learning Torah wherever it is, or you're going to shul, you're doing mitzvot, chesed here and there, and you see people out there that have a luxurious life. They've got fantastic houses and cars and everything, and they're bopping at the discos, and they're going to the internet cafes, and and you think, what is this? What am I doing? I'm wasting my time sitting here. I'm not doing anything. These people are dancing and jumping and enjoying life. Let me go and be like them. But you don't realize that the dance that they're doing is the dance to the tune of the Satan. They're dancing because they've got no life of Torah, no life of mitzvot, only a life of hevel havalim. So I think, Michael, this is what you're alluding to when we say don't let those influences creep in to your life, because it's not something you want to aspire to. It's something you want to run away from. It says, do not associate with a rasha. Don't feel sorry for yourself that you're missing out. You're not missing out on anything. Adrabba, the opposite is true. They are the ones who are missing out. They're the ones who should be looking to you to change their lifestyles.
And further, just to conclude, I referenced something called Avos to Rav Nosson, which was a kind of parallel Pirkei Avot, and I'd like to quote from there to give it a voice here in these lessons. So, in the Avos to Rav Nosson, chapter 30, verse 3. Anyone who clings to evildoers, what's their commentary? Even though he does not do like their deeds, he takes recompense like them. And one who clings to the righteous, even though he does not do like their deeds, takes recompense with them. So what they're saying here is, even if you just identify with them, or you don't even actively have to sit with them, you are tagged with the same cloth, and you will be punished accordingly. But also, he specifically mentions, if you cling to the righteous, even though you don't do like they do, you take recompense like them. You are given credit for even just clinging to them. You don't have to be involved totally with them. And they further commentate on, as you have made a partnership, Hashem will break up your work, and do not despair of the divine retribution. Of us to Rav Nosson says, he made these two things adjacent and said, do not befriend an evildoer, because you need not despair from punishment, and do not say in your heart, he is still standing in tranquility, and times are good for him, I will befriend him, and when his good fortune change, I will distance myself from him, because you cannot, as you will know, what a new day brings, and his time will come in an instant, and you will be taken with him. When he begins to fall, he and all his friends will fall. And also don't say, I will show him love outwardly, but I will not love him in my heart, as it is also evil for you to flatter him, since it is sin to flatter evildoers in this world. And about this matter, Shlomo HaMelech said in Proverbs 24, 21 to 22, fear Hashem, my son, and the king, and do not mix with changers, for their time comes suddenly, the doom of both. Who can foreknow? The explanation is that he made adjacent the fear of Hashem to the fear of flesh and blood, as a metaphor relating to the fear of the body from which it is perceived by the eye, with the fear of the soul, which is invisible. And he said, when you see that the king hates all those who love his enemies, and that he metes out bad to him, asks, who is it that filled his heart to love the enemy of Hashem, and does to him the same thing that he does to his enemy? Know that so too Hashem does to all those who mix with changes, that is to say, those who change the Torah and commandments. As the words change here is transitive, as in Job 29:22, after my word things were not changed, and when the changes are struck, their friends will also be collected with them. Should one give aid to the wicked and befriend those who hate Hashem? For this it shall be upon you, as his time will come suddenly. You will not be able to escape for your life, and the doom of both who can foreknow, meaning to say, the doom of the king's hater and the doom of the hater of Hashem, who knows when it will come. So no man can be careful to befriend them and to save his own life. And that concludes this Mishnah.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much, Michael. Okay, we will see you, Be'ezrat Hashem, next week when we will be doing Mishnah 8, Yehuda ben Tabai and Shimon ben Shetach. Until then, have a wonderful and safe week.